Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with another Total War Warhammer 3 video. Today's topic is the Lord of Undeath himself, Nagash, and how he could possibly be implemented into the Total War Warhammer series. So without further ado, let's begin. Nagash is one of the most famous names in the Warhammer Fantasy franchise. Born into royalty but not to rule, Nagash would instead serve in the mortuary cults of Nehekara. His talents and intellect were obvious from the very beginning, being well respected among his peers. However, such prestige was not enough for Nagash. Greed and jealousy would take over this man's life, where eventually he would betray his family and his people. Dabbling through the dark arts, it is through Nagash that we see so much undeath in the Warhammer fantasy world, where races such as the Vampire Counts, the Tomb Kings and the Vampire Coast are indeed extensions of his own will. He is a self-made god and a massive fan favourite, where his name will pop up on social media every so often, especially the Total War Warhammer forums, in question to see if he will eventually be added into the Total War Warhammer series. There's a bit of a division here through the fans. Some of them would like to see him, some of them say he's too powerful. Now I want to add in my 2 cents into this. Yes, Nagash is very powerful, but he is not all-powerful. Nagash is not invincible, and indeed he has been beaten time and time again. His forces have been repelled by the people of Nehekara, he was defeated in combat by a prince of Nehekara who wielded a magical warpstone blade, and took a very nasty beating from the God King Sigmar himself, while Sigmar was still in mortal form, I may add. The only time he could be considered near invincible was during the end times, where he had harnessed the power of the Wind of Death itself. And even then, Nagash himself knew of his own limitations. He knew he was not completely powerful and he could not stand alone against the forces of chaos. So it is safe to say that if he ever gets implemented into the Total War Warhammer series, he won't be completely powerful and undefeatable. It's also important to note that just because a character is near invincible in the lore doesn't mean that he would be in game. Take for example Nagash himself in Warhammer Fantasy Battles during the End Times, or as commonly referred to as 8.5 edition. 2 well-placed cannon shots and 2 failed ward saves could see Nagash being killed off turn 1. Which, as ridiculous as that sounds, yeah, it's happened, I've seen it personally, it's actually really funny. Nagash's possible inclusion into the Total War Warhammer series has been hinted at a few times, especially during Warhammer 2. I might be missing a few out here, but these are the hints as follows. Firstly, in Archon the Black's campaign, you're trying to gain control of the Black Pyramid in order to revive Nagash, but it's also mentioned that he's not inside that pyramid. Fairly recently, his base of operations, Nagashizar, was added into the Wartle Empire's campaign, where controlling that region also has a special landmark region that features his dried husk. And I believe near the end of Luthor Harkin's campaign, there is a bit of an Easter egg near the end, where it says he's being summoned to become a Mortarch? I might be wrong about this one. In all honesty, it's been a while since I've played a Vampire Coast campaign. But in all honesty, given the fact that there have been so many hints and how extremely popular this character is by the fans, I think it's not a matter of if, but when Nagash will be added to the Total War Warhammer series. Now, we've already done a faction-focused video on a possible Legions of Nagash faction, but in this video I'd like to talk about a possible way that he could be implemented into the Total War series in 3 different styles. Firstly, when the player is controlling a faction that is not undead or tied to Nagash. Secondly, when the player is playing as an undead faction. And thirdly, when the player is playing as the Legions of Nagash itself. Let's look towards the first section, when you're playing as something that isn't undead. The Lord of Undeath and his legions should act as another endgame faction towards the end of your campaign, very similar to the Chaos Invasion. The threat of chaos has really never been a big one, so adding in a new factor might make things more interesting. But instead of working in the same way as the Chaos Invasion, where everything just comes at you full force, a possible way of implementing it would be Nagash coming in by himself. He and his forces would start off relatively weak, but very well defended. Now, the longer you take to destroy him, this is where things start getting more interesting, where various different undead factions across the Warhammer world will begin to ally up with Nagash. Not via confederation, but a forced military alliance. If left to his own devices, eventually forces of Tomb Kings, Vampire Counts and Vampire Coast would pledge their allegiance to the Lord of Undeath, and the whole of the Warhammer world could see itself permanently engulfed by undeath. I honestly think something like this would be rather cool, especially to give you some sort of endgame incentive. They're going to buff up the Chaos Invasion soon enough, but by very late campaign you're already very powerful, so having 2 different threats to fight against might make things more interesting. This also could translate quite well when you're playing as an undead faction, where when Nagash rises you could have the choice of joining him or not, very similar to how Norska has it in regards to the Everchosen. If you were to join up with him, you would become a permanent vassal of his, but unlock the recruitment of, say for example, the Morghast unit as a reward to do so. However, now that you've pledged yourself to eternal servitude, you would now be given orders from your master. This could range from anything like killing a lord, taking a city, and so on, but failure to do so will see you being punished, where you could suffer negative public order, maybe a rebellion, or in the most extreme cases, Nagash could even send an army against you to try and teach you a lesson. And now for our third and final point, playing as the Lord of Undeath himself. You should be able to start off in your base of Negashizar, still relatively weakened from your recent resurrection, but with a number of quests to be able to regain your artifacts of power, which should return you to peak strength. Now, the mechanic of seeing other undead factions join you could be implemented too, and I see it in two possible ways. Firstly, you could either defeat the leaders of each faction outright. Doing so would force them into confederation with you, and they would become permanent vassals that can never betray you, with the obvious exception here being Cetra, of course. Or via a special technology tree type of thing where you would pay a hefty amount of resources to be able to subjugate these factions. Naturally, Cetra once again would be out of the question here. In all honesty, I'd like to see something like those 3 points discussed in the video if and when Nagash gets implemented into the Total War Warhammer series. We need another big bad, another faction to focus our efforts towards, because at the end of the day, there's only really so much that Chaos can do. Yes, we'll eventually have the Warriors of Chaos, the Beastmen, the Demons of Chaos, and possibly the Darwizar fighting together, but they're all concentrated coming from one area. Yes, I am very much aware that they've got different sub-factions spawning in different locations, but having a threat of 2 concentrated big bads would be a good idea to split up your forces and make something a little bit more difficult. Especially since you can essentially snipe out Archaon and his forces, well, what, turn 1 as soon as they spawn? Having a major threat on the other side of the world would also have to make you split up your forces, so you won't be able to snipe them out straight off the bat. But what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and let's start a bit of a discussion. I'm honestly rather curious to see what you guys think about Nagash and his possible implementation, and maybe you guys have different ideas on how he could be implemented, not only as a playable faction, but as an AI faction too. I mean, the possibilities are endless. I've seen through the forums what other people's ideas are, and they were honestly quite impressive too, so I'd like to see what you guys think. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below, we have various different social media links such as Facebook, Instagram, and Discord, where you can get in contact with the Great Book team, talk to us about Total War, Warhammer, or just anything really. Also in the description section below is an affiliate link with Element Games, where you could get loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Purchasing using this link and also using our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. Honestly, it's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A special thank you to our patrons Gibraltar LUSC and Ryan Bertsche for subscribing to us at our fame level. Honestly, you guys are super cool. And a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing, and commenting on these videos. Honestly, the channel's been growing a lot lately, and it's all thanks to you guys. Without you, the Great Book would be nothing. We're trying to implement more videos into the channel soon, but we're getting stuff done outside of YouTube at the moment, just like artwork and so on for the channel. It's just taking a little while to get everything to look to a standard that we feel is cool. Honestly, guys, thank you so much for all the support lately. It's been amazing. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.